And welcome to the October 24th Traffic and Transportation Commission meeting. I would like to call this meeting to order and initiate a roll call with commissioners. Go ahead, Richard. Yeah, just announce yourself, present.
We'll do a roll call then. Commissioner Pashai,
Present.
Commissioner Smith,
Present.
Commissioner Wright, Commissioner Tabande, Vice Chair Castle,
Present.
and Chair Patton.
Present. Thank you so much. I'd like to ask Commissioner Mike if he would lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Richard, would you like to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please? Thank you.
Flag over there. Hand over your heart. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you for that. Can I have a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Second, thank you. And may I also have a motion to approve the minutes from July 25th, 2023?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. As for public comment, do we have any public comment tonight?
Any cards? No cards.
Okay, wonderful. So moving on from public comment, our agenda items, our first item is a request to form a subcommittee to review applications and interview applicants for the student member position.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, the code allows you the opportunity to have a student commissioner. Commissioner, I want to pronounce his name correctly, Tabande has been your commissioner. His term actually ends, and he, unable to be here tonight, was able to be here last time. What staff is asking is if the commission would form a subcommittee. We do have applicants. We'll reach out to Commissioner Tabande to see if he's interested in serving again. We also have applications from other interested students. And so we would like to form a subcommittee of two to have you review those, interview the candidates, and then make a recommendation to the full commission for that student to sit as your student commissioner.
Understood, thank you. What will we call this subcommittee?
Student commissioner subcommittee.
Okay, fair enough. Commissioners, would anyone like to serve on the subcommittee?
I can do that.
Okay, thank you, Mike.
I can as well.
Thank you, Adam. Okay, wonderful.
We will make sure that you get those applications, the two of you. You can arrange a meeting if you need staff, let us know. But being it's just two of you, you can arrange that at your will, and then come back before the next meeting. Certainly let us know ahead of time, and we'll get all that prepared for the next meeting.
Wonderful, thank you.
Quick question on that. How do you solicit those applicants?
Can you speak into the mic? I can't hear you.
How do you solicit the applicants for this position?
There's different ways. The mayor has a youth council. Word goes out about the opportunity to sit on any commission. All of the commissions have, or most of them, have a student commissioner. Through schools, word of mouth, it's on our website. social media.
Okay.
So there are different times where there's a call for applications. We have, I think, 2, maybe 3 that are interested in this specific commission.
Thank you.
Wonderful. So, moving on, traffic impact thresholds is our next agenda item.
Mr. Chairman, this is something that we have been working on. Actually, state law has required us to change the way we look at traffic impacts. And for that, I'm going to ask our traffic engineer, Tom Miracle, to walk you through. I should note that the commission has seen, some of you that have spent time on the commission, you may have seen this before. It may be new information to others of you. We're looking for some recommendations to the city council from this commission. So if you have some questions, please ask the staff, and then at the end, we'll be looking for a recommendation.
Wonderful. Thank you.
With that, I'll turn it over to Tom.
Thank you, Phil. Chair, members of the commission, we were here in September of 2020. I think we have a technical question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. In September of 2020, the staff was before you to talk about this issue of traffic impact analysis and the change of state law. The commission made a recommendation at that time, and we are now coming back kind of through the process now that the general plan update has been done. We had some, when we originally took the recommendations from the commission, both this commission and planning commission to council, a few of the council members had a comment and directed staff to kind of come back through the process and look at a couple of things, which I'll get into later. So we're coming back to get a slight change. The general plan also is, from the time that we were here to the time now, the general plan update has been approved. And not only did planning commission, but also council recommended and approved that we keep the level of service standards the city has had for many, many years, in addition to requiring the new vehicle mile travel standard, which, again, I'll go through in more detail. These two things are essentially state law. The California Environmental Quality Act requires us to only use or consider vehicle miles traveled as an environmental impact for transportation. However, they did not limit the city's ability to still look at operational standards as a city discretionary permit review process. So that's essentially what we're doing. Again, before, so this law was known as SB 743. It was actually adopted about 10 years ago. It took 5 or 6 years for the state to come up with guidance on it, and it's taken the cities across the state kind of 4 to 5 years to now go through the implementation process. It did require us to change our general plan before we could adopt these thresholds and be compliant. In the meantime, we've been following the state guidance, which sets kind of the minimum or recommended vehicle miles traveled standard until we adopt our own at the city. So why is this change happening? It's really something that's being dictated by the state to focus on kind of the environmental greenhouse gas impacts of transportation, rather than looking at circulation and congestion and those types of things. It's really meant to, it's an environmental document that this is for CEQA compliance, that really these standards need to be more focused on environmental standards as opposed to operational standards. And really to the heart of it, it's getting at those greenhouse gas emission goals at the state level, as well as trying to promote kind of healthier communities where you're focused not so much on moving cars, but on moving people and not moving people as far through vehicles. So what the city is doing is we're breaking these into two pieces. One is this environmental impact analysis, the transportation environmental impact analysis. That is the CEQA review that's required by law for us to do for any project that it requires environmental analysis, and that is based upon vehicle miles traveled. The second thing that we're doing is we're sort of shifting our prior requirements for managing congestion and safety and driveway and access issues over to what we're now calling the local transportation assessment. And that's a separate report. So when a development project comes in, they're essentially preparing two reports. One is the environmental report and one is this operational impact. So they're going to be looking at, after my project, how do the intersections work? How does the roadway work? How do my driveways work? How does the internal circulation work? How is it safe for pedestrians to get to and from my project, and those types of things that we've traditionally looked at for years that are no longer required or allowed to be considered under the CEQA Environmental Act. For those of you that have never heard the term, so I'm going to kind of pause here. Those of you that never heard the term vehicle miles traveled, or VMT, this is really kind of a relatively new measurement in transportation, where the important part of really is not that you're taking a trip, but it's the length of that trip. The longer you travel to go do something, the more greenhouse gas emissions you on that trip have in terms of affecting the environment. So part of the goal of these, by reducing vehicle miles traveled, is to get you to be able to still, if you need to take that trip, can you take it using public transit, walking, biking, a shorter trip? So one of the things that are kind of in this screening process I'm going to talk about is if a project is actually creating opportunities for you to go to a grocery store or to get your hair cut or to go to a doctor's office that's closer than where you would otherwise have to go, that's actually having a positive impact on reducing the miles that you travel to go do those things. And those are considered kind of locally serving land uses. So most small commercial is locally serving land uses where you're providing more opportunity for people to go about their day-to-day business, but being able to do so in a shorter radius from your house. So those types of projects are encouraged in order to do that. So there's a screening criteria where if a new project comes in, if it meets that qualification for, it's a small group of or single commercial project, and it's going to have the size and type of retail spaces that are going to provide those local services, that project is presumed to not have a vehicle miles traveled or a transportation impact when it comes to environment, because it's actually potentially improving it by shortening those distances you have to drive to go do those things. And that creates what we call these low VMT area maps, where there are areas of the city where you have these types of services, so that if you are putting a project in that area, it's going to be naturally generating lower vehicle miles traveled because it's serving that area. The other screening criteria is what's called a transit priority area, where you have a high level of transit service that people can use to go about their daily business. We don't have any high quality or high level of transit service in Calabasas, so that's not a criteria, although it's required for us to look at. It's one that we'll likely never use. And then if a project doesn't kind of go through this screening process, where it's in a low VMT area or it's of a project type and or size that is not going to have or benefits the vehicle miles traveled, then they have to do a full VMT analysis. And that means running a regional traffic model where they put the land use, the change in land use into that model, and then it predicts through the modeling effort how many trips and of what length they're going to be from that development, and they would compare that then to the city's threshold for is it an impact or not. So what we're talking about tonight is setting those thresholds. So previously, when we came to the commission, the ultimate recommendation was to use the state guideline threshold of 15% below the citywide average. So the way this is done is the city has an average vehicle miles traveled per resident, per population, or per employee. So there's various levels. And what we're doing is we're comparing this new project to the citywide average. So what we're saying is this new project going to make things better than what's already happening in terms of how people drive, or is it going to make it worse? And the threshold is 15% below that average. That's the state's sort of minimum threshold. They want you to be able to mitigate at least 15% to meet some state goals related to greenhouse gas emissions. That was the recommendation that went forward ultimately to council. One of the council members recommended that we consider following the county threshold, which is 16.8%. And that's based upon a different statewide emission standards from what's called CARB, the California Air Resources Board. So there's kind of multiple things going on in terms of who at the state thinks those air quality thresholds should be. And the comment was kind of like, we should use the counties because that's more regional as opposed to this statewide average. And it's a little bit harder threshold for developers to potentially meet because you have to have a project that reduces the VMT more. And if you have an impact, then you have to do more things to reduce VMT for your project. So that's essentially what we're doing is we're coming back to recommend that we move forward with the recommendation of following the county's current standard of 16.8%. This is an example of the map for the 16.8%. The area that is in yellow would be what's called low VMT screening area. Sorry, take that back. The area in pink would be higher than the city's current average. The yellow would be between 0 and 16.8. So actually any office building that we build in the city is going to have, it doesn't screen out, it's going to presume to have an impact and would have to do the full analysis to determine that or not. And that's typically because office buildings, we don't have enough population density to probably have those office buildings just be occupied by people within close proximity. The next one is for residential. So the areas in blue are the ones that would be meeting our threshold. So they would be that 16.8%. And those are areas where if a residential project comes in, it is presumed to have no transportation impact on the environment. In the yellow and orange areas, it would presume to potentially have an impact and we would have to do the full analysis. So we have projects that are coming in now through the planning process. So for instance, the Commons is looking at adding some residential. They're looking at adding some residential next door over there. Those projects are in this blue area, and by the nature of those projects, they would presume to have no transportation impact. Because they're adding population where there's already, services that can support those residents, and vice versa, those residents can support those businesses. Doesn't mean they may not have other transportation impacts that we'll be looking at through that sort of second process. So I'm going to pause here. Anybody have questions about vehicle miles traveled and sort of that threshold before I move on to the next? Can you speak into the mic, please?
Where do you determine the threshold of the actual miles traveled? Where are you pulling that data from?
So the thresholds are it's through a variety of things. There's modeling that's done on the regional level, on the statewide level, and in some cases, individual cities have their own traffic models that will do that. The models are socioeconomic and or land use based models. So they're trying to pair trips of residential and commercial using land use patterns, socioeconomic data, and then it's calibrated by using the household surveys that are done across the country during the census. There's a significant percentage of the population, or statistically significant percentage of the population across the United States that fills out these household travel surveys that say that they literally take a diary for a period of time. Those are used to calibrate the models because they know those diaries from people that live in LA County show that on average, depending on what neighborhoods you live in, you travel to these destinations.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you, Tom. So the recommendation tonight is more along the lines of what's currently the threshold in the county of Los Angeles at that 16.8. Is that accurate?
That is correct. For VMT, that we would be following what the county's threshold is.
Got it.
As opposed to the state's threshold.
Right. Perfect.
Okay?
Good. Yep.
So there's no more questions about VMT. I'm going to move on to the next.
Anybody know? Nope. Thank you.
So for the sort of the second analysis that's done, this is not required by state law. Many cities have decided that they're not going to do any other analysis when development projects come in. But many cities have said, you know what, we still think it's important to look at intersection operations, to look at site circulation, driveway access, pedestrian safety, and we think those things are all important still. We may or may not be able to force a developer to mitigate things like a CEQA document would require them. But we still have land use approval authority that's discretionary that allows us to put conditions on development to make them either do or contribute towards improvements in those areas. One of the things that's a slight wrinkle on this, though, is a transportation improvement project could itself have a VMT impact. So adding, say on Calabasas Road, adding a third lane in one direction would theoretically increase the vehicle miles traveled because you're adding capacity to the roadway where people could use it to travel on across a distance. Calabasas Road itself is too small to really make that argument, but like Muro Road, if Muro Road was widened to 4 lanes in each direction all the way, that could potentially contribute because it's helping the freeway operations work a little better during peak period, and people might say, hey, the freeway works a little bit better, I'm going to take that trip now where I wouldn't have taken it before. So the concept, it's the concept of induced travel, where as the freeways get widened and work better, people actually drive more, and that is well researched and well known now, and it's induced travel is one of the things where, as professionals, we've realized you can't build yourself out of congestion. You can make improvements at certain locations, but on a region, we can't just widen the freeways to 20 lanes in each direction. It doesn't actually solve anything, and actually makes things worse. But what we want to do then is we want to look at, okay, what projects are likely to have some sort of local transportation impact. And the threshold that we've always used is if it generates more than 110 trips in a day. So 110 trips in a day is 10 single-family homes. So if it's larger than that, it's going to potentially have an impact on the surrounding street network. If it's smaller than that, then we're going to say, you know what, unless we know of a specific issue that it's projects being built next to, we're not going to require you to do a full traffic analysis of that project site. And what we would do is we would do the typical thing we've always done. We would estimate the number of trips that project would generate. We would distribute it across the network, compare the pre-project to the post-project conditions, and then look at things like level of service, which is the intersection operations, using essentially vehicle delay to determine level service A through F, just like our report cards when we were kids. Good level service, A, B, C, in some cases D at the freeway interchanges, poor level service, E and F, F1, F2, where you have constant congestion. So typically, E and F, you never clear that queue for that period of time, that peak hour period of time. It clears eventually, but that peak hour, it's congested. That's level service F, to kind of get a feel for that. We're looking at site distance analysis. So as you come in and out of driveways, we want to make sure that site development is not happening, so the driveways are not safe for either pedestrians on the sidewalk, bikes in a bike lane, or vehicles on the street. So we're looking at all those driveway accesses for site distance. Active transportation access is actually required by the building code to have pedestrian access from the public right-of-way sidewalk to the project site and the buildings. So building and safety will look at it. From that perspective is there a connection? We'll look at it from the perspective of, is that the right connection? Is it at the right place? Is it the place people are going to use? Does it really connect to things, or is it just they drew a line on a map because it was the easiest or cheapest way of getting there? On-site circulation and queuing, certain types of projects will have drive-up windows that may or may not have a queuing problem. We'll make them do queuing analysis and see if that queue is going to spill out into drive lanes or, worse, onto the street. And then truck access, loading areas, and then kind of looking at general safety issues for how the site is going to circulate and how they're getting access. And then through that process, they could potentially have impacts that they then would have to mitigate through the conditional use permit. And we've always had these level of service thresholds for intersections and that have been in the general plan until the new one was updated. They were taken out. But what we're doing is essentially carrying those same level of service standards forward in our recommendation that the thresholds include those. So for city-operated signalized intersections, if it's already operating at a level of service A, B, C, or D, and it goes to E or F, then any increase in the delay is an impact, and we would make them mitigate it somehow. If it's already an E and F, then if they have more than 5 seconds of delay being added to that intersection, then that's an impact. At freeway interchanges, slightly different because those are already usually more congested. It's 3 seconds of delay being added. For always stop controlled intersections, there is a methodology for also looking at delay there. For anything that's A, B, or C, if it goes to D, E, or F, then it's considered an impact because it's adding increase in delay. And then if it's a D, E, or F existing and it continues to be D, E, or F, and there's more than 3 seconds of delay added from the project, then they have an impact that they have to somehow fix. And then similar with the unsignalized intersections where you would have, say, a four-way or a three-way intersection where you have the side streets have a stop sign. Then we have, do the analysis, does it meet warrants for there to be something like a traffic signal or some other traffic control device that needs to be put in to help mitigate that? And then level service D or E, and does it meet a specific warrant for traffic signal, then we could require them to put that traffic signal in, so on. And then I kind of already talked about the other site impact things we would look at in terms of access and queuing and circulation. So the recommendation is that the commission adopt the VMT and level service thresholds as presented by staff, and then recommend the city council adopt those also. There is a copy of a draft resolution in your packet that we would be taking to the council if the recommendation is approved, and I'd be happy to have answer any questions you have.
Wonderful. Thank you, Tom. We appreciate your thorough outline here and giving us this information. So recommendation obviously is to go along with the 16.8% of what the current county has set forth. Commissioners, everybody agree with that?
Agree.
I do.
Yeah.
I have a question, if you don't mind.
Yeah, go ahead, Adam.
I also agree with the 16.8% threshold, but my question would be just in the chance that the city decided to go with the state, which was at 15%, by not hitting the county threshold of 16.8, could that affect potential grant funding or anything that the city might seek in the future because we're not in line with their threshold?
Commissioner Smith, so the answer is no.
Okay.
Our requirement is to follow the state's We can make it higher. We have to justify why, and we have justification that the county has already prepared justification for why it's higher. We can go lower. We can go 10%. Much harder to justify. Some cities that have done that have already been challenged by the state because the state doesn't want to make it easier for the development to happen and not contribute to lowering our greenhouse gas emissions. So whatever number we choose does not affect grant funding at all.
Okay,
Good.
thank you.
Good. And so the next item on recommendations was approve using the previous general plan level of service. Is this something that you would like us to vote on as well?
Yeah, so this is the sort of that second analysis. Because the general plan did not carry that forward, it's no longer a requirement of a development. Fortunately, the developments that have been moving through the process since the general plan was adopted have voluntarily followed those standards because we strongly asked them to. But this eventually, with council approving that through the resolution, it'll lock those back into place like we had in our previous general plan.
Okay, wonderful. Then I would vote yes on that particular recommendation as well. Commissioners?
Yes.
I'll second it. I vote yes.
Yes.
And then lastly, we recommend the city council adopts the thresholds approved by the TTC. I would also vote yes on that.
I'll second it.
Vote yes.
So it looks like we have 3 motions and 3 seconds. I don't think we need a roll call vote, but I think we need a positive vote in affirmation for all 3 of those as opposed. So,
Commissioner Pashai,
Yes.
Commissioner Smith,
Yes.
Commissioner Wright, Commissioner Tabande, Vice Chair Castle,
Yes.
and Chair Patton.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Wonderful. Then moving through our agenda, the next up is traffic mitigation fee update and project prioritization.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, this again is to mitigate any impacts on transportation, transit that development brings. In the city of Calabasas, we've adopted a traffic impact fee. So that is a fee that is paid per unit, per square foot, depending on the type of development. It is time to update that, and so we're bringing that back to you with recommendations on where to set that. And again, I'll ask Tom Miracle to walk you through that exercise, and then at the end, we'll be asking for a recommendation to the city council. Tom?
it's actually not a recommendation to city council at the end.
Sorry.
It's not a city council recommendation
It rests with you.
for this one. So this is sort of another piece in the development project pathway to looking at transportation impacts. The general plan has a list of projects that the city desires to complete to bring its network up to where we believe it needs to be for general plan build out. And instead of, so the previous discussion was about what specific impacts does each project have. This is looking at general impacts of projects across the city where no one project may be contributing a lot, but cumulatively they're all contributing to needing that to happen. So we're basically saying, we're gonna build that project, it's gonna cost $1 million. 50% of the new traffic on it is gonna be from new development. They're gonna pay 50% of the cost. The city's gonna pay 50% of the cost for existing traffic that's on it. And that fee would then be coming through this program. And so this is also tied to the general plan update, because the general plan update revised and updated that list of projects that's in there. A lot of projects that were in there before have been completed. The previous project list did not include anything related to active transportation. And this is an opportunity for us to now kind of look at that new project list that's in the general plan, which includes pedestrian, bicycle, and roadway improvement projects, as well as some safety programs. What I'd like to do is a bit of an exercise. I'm going to make a recommendation, but the commission can do this any way they want. I have put together a spreadsheet just to use as a tool that has the projects listed on it. And what I'd like the commission to do is rank these projects high, medium, or low. The reason being is that we may not be able to fund all of these projects through a fee program that is reasonable for development to pay. If it ends up being a $50 million pot and a single-family development is going to have to pay $30,000 in traffic mitigation fees, well, no one's going to build another house. Now, some people may say that's a good thing, but it's not the city's role to prevent development by having fees that are so high that they're not reasonable. So what we want to do is, as we develop this program, as staff and our consultant team working on this, we want to be able to make sure we have those projects that the community feels is important for transportation. So this is your role, acting on behalf of the community, to help rank those and make sure that at least the high priority ones are getting handled to the extent possible, and maybe the low priority ones we look for other ways to bring money to the table, or those projects may not get done. So what I was thinking about doing, I listed all the projects in this spreadsheet and kind of act as a table where we're going to go through the projects one by one, and I will either leave it in high or move it over into medium or low based upon the recommendation from the commission. The reason I thought it might be good to just be able to see the list as we go through, particularly when we get to the end, and kind of do a balance check of, okay, now that we're looking at the high, medium, low, and they're all on the same page, does that look right? As opposed to just saying this one's high, this one's high, this one's high, this one's low, this one's medium. I think having this visual clue will help us when we get to the end. So that's my recommendation, but if the commission chooses to do a different way, I'd be happy to do that.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
Tom, are you looking for a third, a third, a third? As you said, they can't all be high because we need to place some priority. But just for a little bit of guidance, and then, are you looking for a third, a third, a third? Or
Not
10
exactly,
high?
not exactly a third, a third, a third. Sorry. Does everybody have this attachment that was included? So this has a little more information about each project. This should have been included with your report.
I don't think it's there, Tom.
It was,
Yes.
yeah, it was attached to the packet.
Is it
Yeah,
this
that's it.
attachment?
It's this one.
It may not have been attached in a readable way, huh? Dependent, I guess you used the wrong printer. So if you want, I can go by project and I can describe the project a little more so you understand what we're talking about, and then you guys can have a discussion. But I'm not looking for a third, a third, a third. I'm looking to see that we have some projects that are low and some projects that are medium, and I'll probably, in my head, go through and go, we still got about $40 million in the high. Is there anything in there that maybe is a medium or?
Okay, and then the other question I had is do you have any recommendations for the commission if, they're just not sure for high, medium, or low?
Sure. My recommendation is that some of the bike facilities, particularly the Class 3, just for kind of a quick update. When we talk about bike facilities, Class 3 is a bike route, and that would be where you only have signs and maybe some markings on the ground to indicate bikes may be present. Class 2 is an actual marked bike lane where there's a separate lane for bikes to be in. May or may not be buffered by a striped out area between the moving vehicles and the bikes. Class 1 is a bike path that is a multi-use trail type facility for two-way bike and pedestrian traffic that's physically separated by at least 5 feet from the roadway itself. Class 4, which we don't have on any of our lists, it would be basically a buffered bike lane with a vertical element within the buffered area. So my recommendation would be that most of the class 3, if not all the class 3, can be low because those are things that are relatively inexpensive that staff can implement through when we're going through and doing a paving project or other maintenance project in those areas. They could be incorporated. Some of the class 2 bike lane facilities, similarly, as long as it doesn't include kind of a major cost related to widening, those are ones that we're gonna have to think about more as, you know, potentially if that's a critical element, we may wanna have the class 2s as being a higher priority. And then really look at things like, you know, we have this one, we have a project that's $23 million all by itself. And it's like, is that important, do you believe, for the community to have Las Virgenes Road widened between Lost Hills Road and the south city limit? I mean, that project is a huge project. It's about half the total cost of the whole program. So, you know, if that's important, it's a whole lot of money that the city, you know, the city may end up having to spend, because again, we're talking development fees are based upon the proportional increase by new development. So we would be running models based upon predicted new development. The city still has to cover the cost for existing traffic on those streets. So the $23 million project, the city may have to come up with 20, and developers going to have to pay 3. Is that from your perspective, is that a good use of the city's $20 million?
Mm-hmm.
And Mr. Chair, I ask those questions just so that you all get some idea of how to balance this. We are asking you to act on behalf of the community and tell us what's important. So if that $23 million project is absolutely important, then let's put it as a high priority. But if you need some help and some guidance from a technical or expert to kind of help you get through what is important, staff is here to help you with that.
Actually, I have one question in that regard about the same exact line item on that Las Virgenes that we were just talking 23 million plus. Because I know in the case of wildfire, that corridor is always under stress because, you know, there is only one getaway road. How powerful that project would have impact on that?
So the project, like other projects we're looking at now, you know, related to the discussions that we've had with Planning Commission and Council about the general plan safety element, a lot of discussions about it, evacuation and what are we looking at in terms of our circulation system to help in an evacuation. And so, for instance, we've got a project now that phase 1 is nearing construction out on Mulholland Highway near Old Topanga. And that's providing a widening of the roadway with wider shoulders that allows us to actually, in an emergency, get more vehicles through, but doesn't create more driving lanes for everyday traffic, and does create a shoulder for bikes to ride on and get out of the way of traffic, so it's kind of benefiting all. You know, that project, eventually, the master plan at least has a similar cross-section all the way down Mulholland within the city limits, where it's going to be a wider cross-section that allows us to get, instead of just 2 lanes, get us 3 lanes of moving traffic in an emergency, so that maybe you have 2 lanes going out, but there's still something open for emergency vehicles to go one way or the other. So this would be a similar type of project where we would be mostly working on shoulder widening and things to create more pavement area for emergency evacuation, fixing some shoulders in areas where we have need retaining walls and things where we have slope failures, and then also creating space for bicycles.
Thank you.
Question? When we talk about, in this case, $23 million, we have a total of what to pull from? Relative to $23 million, relative to what gross amount that we have available?
It's a good question. So currently, I'd say most of these projects are not funded at all right now. There's been no identified funding for them. This would be, the traffic mitigation fee would be identified funding if these whatever projects get into that program. And then similar to what staff has done for the Mulholland Highway project is Measure M funds have been used, so that's a countywide sales tax, and we get access to a certain amount of money every year to do those projects. So a lot of them for the whatever development is not helping pay for, the city would be looking for things like Measure M. Typically, roadway improvements are not something the city goes out and spends general fund money on at all. Gas tax money a little bit, but most of that goes to maintenance of the existing roadway system and not towards new facilities. Tatiana might be able to talk a little more about that, being in charge of those programs. But again, this is going to be, in essence, every one of these projects is going to have money. It's going to have money identified. That's probably going to be through grants. And anything that is, one of the things about putting a bike project higher is there's a lot of grant money out there for bike projects right now. And for instance, in this section, if we were to put bike lanes in, we can get an active transportation grant for that, for potentially the whole $23 million, and with little to no local match. And we're getting a roadway widening by putting in bike lanes. And that's a similar thing was done to Muro Road 10, 12 years ago. Muro Road was widened slightly, bike lane went on one side. It actually allowed the city to put in a conduit and put fiber optics so our traffic signals can talk to each other. But that was funded 100% through a bike grant project.
And the grant money for something like that, where does it come from?
So there's countywide money that comes from sales tax, various sources, ACM, R, and then there's statewide, which comes from a variety of sources, some of which, or a big chunk of which, comes from the federal government. So there's pass-throughs. Most of the congestion mitigation and air quality improvement projects are from federal money. The state active transportation program, there's 3 or 4 different legislative sources of money for that mostly come from state revenues of various sources. Gas tax money that's set aside for the state to spend.
Yeah, I guess my question is, it's hard to assign a priority to a project if you don't really have a good feeling as to how much money is available and where's it coming from and how often does it replenish. It's pretty abstract.
And honestly, this exercise is pretty abstract because we're essentially asking for what are the priorities, absence of thinking about funding in some essences. Like, what if these facilities were to be built, which one would you want to be built first, regardless of how much it costs? And I understand that is a big piece of it. But as we work through setting this program up, these are decisions that we have to make as staff and our consultant team, and we're looking for some level of guidance from the community to make sure that we're not putting our own biases into that decision making, but we're actually listening to what the community thinks.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman. Tom, if, let's say that the commission goes through this and they put road projects 1 through 10, and then there's a bike project, and those road projects are $50 million or $100 million, whatever it is. That doesn't preclude us from getting bike grant money to build project 11, 13, and 15. So what it really is doing is giving us a guide to say, this is our priority, this is what we want to do. Don't pass up a grant just because there's something higher on the list. Now, it may be that we're saving all of our money, our Prop MRC, Prop 1, MRC, local return, some sales tax dollars that come back for a big project. But it doesn't preclude us from using other resources that can, let's say, only be used for bike improvements.
Understood. Thank you. Thank you for that.
I have one general question, if I may. I'm sorry, Adam, you had.
I was just going to say, because I do share the same thought, but I think I know myself, I'll be guided by, I think we can start by looking at what is an immediate safety issue, and second to that, what would improve quality of life for the residents of Calabasas.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I asked that grant question earlier regarding the VMT, if we didn't hit that check mark, that would it preclude, because in my day job, I deal a lot with grant funds, and we use it in a lot of different ways. So I'm confident that if we can focus on the safety of the public, quality of life, I think we will find the funding through these other creative ways, through grants and whatever else is available.
I agree with that, Commissioner. Thank you. Yeah, I think a lot of the projects I'm familiar with on this list, and have been over the last several years. So, you know, if you'd like to get started, Tom, I think, unless there's, Mike, did you have a question or a thought you wanted to add to that?
No, but I have a general question. On this list, I see majority is class 2 or 3 bike lane or route. What exactly that means? I don't know. I'm not familiar with that. But the other ones, like the descriptions are different, restriping or traffic signals and all that. But what does it mean? This only the bike class 2 bike lanes or class 3? Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, Tom, if you don't mind explaining that just one more
Yeah,
time real quick,
that's okay.
please. Thank you.
Okay.
Please.
Chair, members of the commission. So the bike facilities indicated on our list come from the city's adopted bike master plan. There are several types of bikeway facilities, class 1, class 2, class 3, and class 4, that are defined by the state. Class 1 is essentially a bike path. So it's a 12-foot wide paved bike and pedestrian only facility that's physically separated from any vehicle roadway. Class 2 is where you have a bike lane striped on the street that provides a separate lane for bicycles to travel in, that cars are not allowed to travel in. Class 3 is a bike route. And this is streets where we encourage people to ride because they may be lower speed or lower volume. So as a parallel route to, say, a high volume, high speed street, it may be better if we have areas where we can't fit in a class 1 or a class 2. There, maybe the best thing to do is to direct people to a parallel, lower volume, lower speed street where essentially the bicyclists and vehicles are mixing, so like a local residential street. And we would then sign that with, we would include signage and pavement markings to indicate to both the bicyclist and the vehicle drivers that, hey, bicycles are going to be present here mixing with traffic. Class 4 is a relatively new designation, and that is essentially a class 2 bike lane where there has been a buffer put in between the striped bike lane and moving traffic, and some sort of vertical element, whether it's a median or a bunch of bollards or that type of thing that has some physical separation, but you're still within the curb to curb of the street.
Okay, thank you. Thanks so much.
So if we're going to start Project 1, the Lost Virginus at Thousand Oaks Roundabout?
Yes, I would vote that as a high priority. You know, that particular intersection gets a tremendous amount of traffic during the school days, and it can create a safety hazard, which we've witnessed before. And so, yeah, I would vote that's a high. Put that on the high side.
Are the other commissioners aware of or understand this project?
Yes. Yes, I am.
Yeah, okay. So if nobody has an issue with
An
that,
objection to that? Yeah.
we can leave it on high
Okay.
and move to the next project.
Wonderful. The Parkmore Road bike lane, this is a class 2, correct, Tom?
No, this is a class
Class-
3.
Is it
Parkmore
3?
Road is not
Yes.
wide enough.
Oh, got it. Yeah.
Parkmore Road is not wide enough to put bike lanes on without removing parking, and
Right.
as a residential street, we would not do that. So this would be taking Parkmore Road and signing it and putting in markings to kind of indicate to drivers, hey, watch out for bicyclists in this area, and bicyclists, this is where we would encourage you to ride.
not, my initial thought, and not trying to go through this very quickly, but my initial thought is the Class 3 and the Class 3, as you had mentioned earlier, would probably be low priority, whereas Class 2 and Class 1 bike lanes are high priorities, certainly in our community where biking is an activity that's widely used. That would be my thought to the commissioners, but I would say, so to reiterate, Class 2 and Class 1 would be high priority, Class 3 would be medium to low priority at this point.
So if the commission desires, I can kind of bulk move all of the Class 3s into low? If
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
For all of the bike lane projects, do we have any data that shows history of traffic collisions, vehicle versus bicyclists in those areas, and the necessity for, the urgency for these projects?
It's a great question. These are strictly at this point from the previously approved bike master plan, so we don't have any current data on every one of these projects. We are intending, as the general plan recommends, we are intending to update the bike master plan, which may change the project list based upon new collision and priority and desirability from the community. The other thing that the general plan states, this new general plan update states, that was not previously in the general plan or even the discussion in the previous bike master plan, was really a desire to look at opportunities and sort of conceptualize more Class 1 bike paths to get within the community without having to go out onto the streets. And that's something that the next iteration of the bike master plan will be looking at specifically, because it was requested by several council members and planning commissioners and even traffic and transportation commissioners when we went through the general plan update. So there's potentially, when the general plan update happens in a few years, we may come back and say, you know what, the traffic mitigation fee program needs to change, or we can say, you know what, a lot of these Class 1 facilities, we think there's lots of grant money for it. Let's leave it out of this particular program, and let's look for grant funding for just those. So that whole sort of bike arena is going to change a little bit when that plan gets updated.
Okay.
Okay, and I'm sorry, second question, I'll make it brief. What's the voice of the people of Calabasas? Is this a big request for bike lanes? Are we hearing from the community on that?
City staff may have a better ability to answer that question. For those of you who don't know, I'm a part-time consultant that works at the city 1 day a week. Historically, the city has, at least I'm not aware of there being a large sort of outcry for an increase. But it is, when it comes to bike facilities in particular, it's kind of a chicken and the egg thing. A lot of people refuse to have their kids go ride where there is no facility, even if the desire is there. So a lot of times you have to go through those planning efforts of where's the best place to build a facility that will get used, that will encourage people to then speak out about, I also need to get here and here and here. So bike facilities are particularly hard because there is a huge percentage of the population that will never ride their bike in a kind of a Class 3 situation where you're mixed with cars, no matter how fast or slow those cars are going. And essentially where we want to get to is where you are being able to ride on a facility, a connected facility that is what's called a low stress network, where anybody from 8 to 80 can feel comfortable riding on. And that's where you get to the Class 1, the buffered Class 2, and the Class 4 sort of protected spaces. Those are the things we're going to be looking at in the next Bike Master Plan update. But right now, I think the community we hear from are the regional bicyclists, who quite honestly are probably going to be out there riding. They're strong, confident riders. They're going to ride in almost any situation. They ask for improvements to be made so things aren't quite tight, but they're also not out there asking for bike paths and for protected bike lanes. They just want more space to occupy while they're mixing with cars.
If I may just add to Tom's explanation on the desire to have bike lanes striped in the city, And also usually comes up where we're talking about bigger road improvement project that becomes one of the priorities of the project, that will look at the comfortable space, not necessarily bike lane, but improved shoulder, comfortable space for bicycles to ride.
Wonderful. Thank you, Tatiana.
And by the way, if I may mention something, because a few years ago, on Mulholland Drive, right around AC Estelle, and there is, we have a bike lane on Mulholland, and as you go from like high school towards AC Estelle, it narrows, and so the bike lanes also narrows. And a police officer, while was responding to an emergency dispatch, he hit a biker and killed him. So that area has never changed. I'm just curious to know, because that is really, I drive every day through that corridor, and every day I sense that all it takes is just a split second of negligence or distraction for someone to run into another biker. We have been lucky that hasn't happened, but is there anything that we could look into that situation? Because that has a quick turn. The bikers turn right in front of the cars. If the driver is not paying attention, they may hit him. I don't know if you guys know what exactly I'm talking about.
I guess, is that something staff has looked into or in the past?
You know, the whole Mulholland corridor in that area between AC Stell and Calabasas High School, there's been a lot of concerns raised in the past 4 or 5 years, in particular about pedestrian safety crossings so kids can get to school, bike riding along the street. The collision, unfortunately, that happened is brought up in many of those discussions with the community. Really what we need to look at is kind of a comprehensive, corridor plan, relook at that, about how can we better provide facilities for bicyclists, for pedestrians to cross. So as you'll notice, there are a couple of projects in here to potentially put traffic signals at a few of those intersections to help pedestrians. Potentially bicyclists, maybe carving out space next to where the old curb used to be and having bicyclists continue along that path is a safer place for them to be. There's a variety of things that we can look at. City staff does not have a big staff, and we have a lot of things that are being worked on. It's on the list of things that we're doing. We're having a lot of discussions right now about school safety and things. But it is something we're very aware of.
Okay.
But how could we put it in motion?
If I may, so this is actually something that we did apply for a grant for the active transportation program through the state to do some of those bicycle improvements on Mulholland Highway, and unfortunately we were not successful in that grant. So it is something that we are actively looking to make improvements on, and we are looking for funding sources. And now we are also looking for a more appropriate way of pulling together all of those things so that we are more successful in the future for a grant.
The reason that it came to my mind, I didn't see that on this list at all anywhere. So how come it's not on this list? I mean, it could be one of the line items on this one.
Again, this list comes from the general plan list of improvements that were shown as a citywide need. The Mulholland corridor is a specific area that was not identified as a roadway improvement need, and the issues related to walking and biking have really popped up since the bike master plan was done. So it sort of has fallen between the cracks of those two needs.
Mm-hmm.
So the bike master plan update and or a corridor plan or a specific project like the one that Treya was talking about, where we've identified some potential solutions and looking for grants, would go towards that effort.
Okay.
Thank you, Tom. So, moving on to I think the next line item would be number 5, and that would be the northbound approach of the Las Virgenes Road, Ventura Freeway, southbound ramp intersection. So my immediate thought is, Does this restriping, because obviously it's going to create another lane on that particular exit, correct? Am I reading this correctly?
Not exactly. So this is actually an improvement that the development project that was proposed there was going to be doing.
Okay.
In essence, right now there are 2 lanes on Las Virgenes, and you can't really get over. Then there's a right turn pocket next to the gas station. Essentially, that right turn pocket becomes a through lane, so it would be a trap through lane, so you would go directly into the freeway ramp from there. It's a way that is improving the operation and safety of the ramp. So it's not something that's adding to the capacity of the roadway to get more traffic through. That's a VMT impact. But
Yeah, I was just going to say,
yeah,
that was my question.
But
Okay.
it is something that's improving a site-specific issue at that location that helps improve the safety. Because what I've seen myself is that some people will drive through that right turn lane to sneak onto the ramp as people are doing what they should be doing and going from the number 2 through lane and merging over, and all of a sudden there's a car next to them, and that's not good. So what this would be doing is sort of better aligning those lanes and providing positive guidance for how to get onto that ramp.
Okay. Yeah, that's a highly congested area in our community anyway, so I would vote that as a high priority.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, absolutely.
I also agree with that location. Would that dedicated right lane or right turn only onto the ramp have raised plastic delineators or something to avoid or prevent people from truly jumping over a painted line?
It's a good question, Commissioner Smith. Because it is a Caltrans location and the city would have to get approval from Caltrans to do anything there, the answer is going to be no. Caltrans would not allow that to be put in. It's kind of a non-standard application of delineators as an initial striping. If the striping goes in as a typical, and we have an issue with side swipes where people are still trying to squeeze in and do those things, then we would work with Caltrans to say, okay, now how can we solve that problem? And something like the delineators would probably go towards that effort.
Okay. Because like I said, I agree. I just think
Yeah.
without raised delineators, we're still going to see that problem. But I do agree it's important. So.
Wonderful. So our next line item would be the Las Virgenes Road between Lost Hills and Mulholland Highway street improvement. This particular project I'm not really that familiar with. Obviously, if we are widening the shoulder and we're increasing the flow of traffic, right, again, are we getting back into a VMT issue? And if so, is that even a concern?
Chair and commissioners, this would be a shoulder widening, so it's not adding any traffic lanes. So
Okay.
it would not be a VMT impact.
Got it.
But it would essentially be kind of a safety and maintenance project, putting in guardrail, widening the shoulders. Again, going toward the question earlier about evacuation, the wider shoulders would allow us to kind of shift everybody over and push 3 lanes of traffic through an emergency. In this case, probably trying to evacuate people out of the areas to the south. Retaining walls and those kind of things to create that shoulder. And it's kind of tied to the Class 2 bike lane project that goes along with this.
Mm-hmm.
If we were to do this project, we would look at sort of combining it with that bike lane project. The bike lane project in and of itself would not necessarily be able to be done on its own without doing many of these improvements anyway.
Understood. Great. Thank you, Tom. Well, obviously, this is a considerable expense. But again, when we're talking about the safety of our community and the residents and trying to create evacuation lanes, I would see this as a warranted expense.
I agree.
Commissioners?
It's a high,
I would agree.
yeah, it's a high one.
I do agree. If I can ask, how many feet does this add roadway edge to roadway edge from what we currently have? If we set up new retaining walls or guardrails?
So it depends where along the corridor. There'd be areas where we would have left turn pockets and those types of things, depending on the need, where it would need to be wider. But typically, we'd be looking at something around 33 feet to 35 feet as the cross-section from edge of pavement to edge of pavement, which again would allow us to push 3 lanes. What direction would have to be emergency services would decide, as opposed to now where most of it is, anywhere from 22 to 28 feet in many sections. You can't get 3 vehicles through.
And that's total edge of pavement to edge of pavement, so you're basically adding a foot to each side, more or less.
Well, in some areas we're adding, 5, 6, 7 feet. In some areas we're only adding a couple of feet, but it would be a consistent cross section all the way down, where it's very.
And we're only talking about the shoulder, right?
That's correct. I mean,
okay.
it would include a repaving of the whole roadway as we do that, and then what you get with is a consistent cross section all the way down, except for you may have widening for left turn pocket or those kind of things. Sorry.
Understood.
I agree that this is high priority. I would want to know during the last major fires that we had, what the evacuation picture looked like at that location. But whether we did get a choke point, whether we had people from opposing directions that couldn't get out, I don't think that was the case. And something we can consider for the commission is once we go into a major evacuation, a lot of things, law enforcement and fire are going to change to one way anyway, going out. So I'm not saying it's not needed. I think it is important, but I think we just need to consider those, and it'd be nice if we had that information down the line to see what the impact was during an actual evacuation.
Yeah, great thought, Commissioner Smith. Do we have any data from 2018?
No, we currently don't have data
Okay.
for this meeting.
Chair and Commission, we had quite a bit of discussion about this specific issue along Las Virgenes during the Planning Commission meetings about the safety element. And my recollection of those meetings is most of the concern was not south on Las Virgenes from Lost Hills, but from Lost Hills north to the freeway. Now, there are residents of Calabasas and residents of the county area that live south of Lost Hills. Many of them evacuated the other way because the fire was here before it was there. But, if a fire starts in Malibu and works its way this way, all of Malibu is evacuating this way.
This way.
And that's, there's so many ways. You look at what happened in Paradise, and they had six ways to get in and out of that valley. 5 of the 6 were on fire. And the one way had many, many issues. So it's hard to predict exactly what's going to happen with a fire, but I think really what this project potentially does is provides a viable alternative for emergency services to say, okay, we've got something we can work with.
Understood. Thank you. Thank you, Tom. Well then, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
I just wanted to comment on something Tom said. The conditions that generate fires in Southern California are 100% of the time generated by high barometric pressure in the north that blows the wind to the south. We will, if we're talking about how to build roads for exiting, you really want to think about, there is no such thing as a fire burning in Malibu that's going to burn north up this way. It cannot happen because the only thing that generates the fire is the wind, and it is virtually unheard of for us to have an onshore flow of high velocity wind. It's only when you get Santa Ana winds that give you that perfect storm, and they always blow from the north to the south.
Commissioner Castle, not to disagree with that logic, but
You can disagree with that.
I mean, I've lived through a fire in Ventura that came from the ocean side into into Ventura because of the on-show. And it was, but not because of the dry and Santa Ana winds. It was an Edison sparked failure that started the fire with a normal on-shore wind conditions. And, you know, we could get that here too.
Okay, fair enough.
Great, then taking this to a vote, I would make this a high priority. Commissioners?
Agree.
We're talking about which one?
We're referencing the Las Virgenes Road between Lost Hills
yes.
and Mulholland
The
Street
23
improvement.
million, yes,
Mhm.
yes, it's a high. Yeah. I agree.
Great, thank you. So,
The next one, Chair, would be Lost Hills Road at Cold Springs Street traffic signal. Right now, that's a four-way stop. And this was identified many years ago as a potential traffic signal. It was in the old general plan and carried forward into the new general plan.
just so I'm clear on this, Tom, this is next to Grape Arbor, correct? Am I right on that, or?
No, Grape Arbor is on the north side of the freeway.
Okay.
So this would be the four-way stop with the school crossing to go to AE Wright.
To go to AE, right, okay,
Mhm.
got it.
And it's got stop signs now where the stop signs flash and there's a crossing guard.
And we just recently added that, didn't we? Isn't that improvement only 3 or 5 years old? It was relatively,
That was done in 2011.
was it really?
Yes.
Oh, goodness sakes.
And, well,
Time flies.
it was
There it goes, yeah.
just last year it was redone.
Okay, yeah, got it.
So if I could provide a little bit of guidance on this one, as some of you may know, I worked in the city when they were first incorporated, and this corridor was the number one traffic concern in the city at the time. Well, the second, Mulholland Highway has always been the number one concern. But there was that Z traffic that still happens where people from the Conejo Valley and Ventura County kind of cut through Lost Hills to get down to Malibu. And potentially one of the downsides of signalizing that intersection is it then promotes the traffic flow along that street, along Lost Hills. The stop sign and subsequently stop signs along that street help discourage traffic from continuing down. The only reason that I think we would really consider putting in a full signal there or a different type of signal called a hybrid beacon, which is maybe what I would be thinking more, is for pedestrian safety. If there's a collision problem or something happening there where we're trying to provide increased safety for our kids trying to get to school and other pedestrians using the area, maybe not a traffic signal, but a hybrid beacon, which is essentially a pedestrian crossing where it would be signalized only when pedestrians are present.
Got it, understood. Well, isn't that similar to what we have in place right now with the lights and the warning lights that come on?
It is similar. The hybrid beacon is similar, but it's more positive. It would actually create a red light when pedestrians are crossing. The downside is when pedestrians are not crossing, it would not be a four-way stop. It would be just a through street
Right.
with no signal. But it provides more positive guidance than the stop sign, as we know, and maybe even more so. Commissioner Smith, people don't always stop at stop signs that they don't feel they should.
Mhm.
You know, this is one where we get a lot of violations at because the side street traffic come from Cold Springs during those peak periods is very low, and the traffic on Lost Hills is very high.
Yeah, I was going to ask that, Tom. Thank you for bringing that up. So, are we seeing a lot of, or are sheriffs writing a lot of traffic tickets as a direct result of still some of the behavior at that particular location?
So we have one motor officer assigned to the city. Most of their efforts to date, at least recently, have been in the Mulholland Highway, Old Topanga Canyon area, because that's the most congested parts of the city, and where we get the most sort of moving violations from parents and people trying to get around all that congestion. The Sheriff's Department has gone out to this location and has written tickets in the past. We're going to talk later about our sort of renewed ongoing conversations with the Sheriff's Department, and we can certainly add this to our list of conversations with them.
If you don't mind, please. Obviously, as it relates to the children in the community, I feel I could speak for all the commissioners when we say this would be a high priority. I feel as though the four-way stop might be the best thing that we've got going for that area right now. But what we're currently doing, I guess, is more appropriately phrased. Adding a stoplight, to your point, now removes the matter of fact that they have to stop, and now we're going to create that flow through traffic, which kind of leads us back to what we had before 2011. Thank you, Tatiana. And so there's a part of me that really wants to keep what we currently have in place, but I'd like to understand a little bit more about the way that we monitor that and the behavioral patterns of the drivers going down that road. Please.
Absolutely, and I would suggest maybe this is a medium project.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because it's not clear as to what the actual solution might be. Because, there's lots of things to look at in this corridor, not to get into a big discussion, but reducing the number of lanes through the corridor and putting in a protected bike facility along one side might be a great improvement to that, and it reduces the capacity for that cut-through traffic to continue. Honestly, I've been monitoring it since the city worked with Caltrans to put in the no right turn on red at the off-ramp due to some sight distance and safety concerns by the Sheriff's Department that had a motor officer almost hit. And I think that's had a marked improvement in decreasing the amount of traffic that goes down Lost Hills. Now, they're just moving over to Las Virgenes, but Las Virgenes is a more appropriate corridor, and it's a corridor that we are working on as a traffic flow corridor. Lost Hills is more of a neighborhood corridor.
Yep. I fully agree. Thank you, Tom.
So, Chair, the next project would be the Calabasas Road widening between Parkway, Calabasas, and Muro Road. So this is the area of the auto dealers, where as those auto dealers have developed, they've been doing some widening projects. We've got actually a couple projects that are going to be doing some improvements as a new dealership is coming in. But really, there is a master plan goal to provide full curb gutter, sidewalk, bike lane improvements along that corridor. So this is that project.
And is this going to widen the curbside after you cross the bridge? You get to the other side, the end of the Morro. Is going to widen that section of it, or not necessarily?
Chair and members of the commission, this project goes to Muro Road. We have an existing project that is designing and ultimately building a roundabout at that location. It's kind of a funky turn thing. It's kind of what might be a roundabout anyway.
Yeah.
So we have a project that is funded that we're moving forward on to build a roundabout there. This project would bring the roadway widening and improvements to that roundabout. It doesn't do anything for the bridge or outside of the city along Muro Road beyond.
Okay.
I would see this particular project as medium. I unless I'm missing something, Tom, I feel that it's something that we could do, fellow commissioners.
No, I tend to agree with medium.
I agree.
Thank you.
Next is 19.
Yeah, the Park Sienna and Park Capri roundabout. I would see that. I would see our roundabouts as high priority. I think it promotes traffic flow. Obviously, there are protections in pedestrian flow as well. And so, fellow commissioners, I would vote a high priority for that.
Well, I drive through that area almost multiple times every day. And in that particular intersection, I honestly don't see that much of an impact spending this much money to have that, because there's not too many traffics. Yes, pedestrians, people are walking, but everybody is kind of, watches for each other. So there's not really, again, I pass there multiple times a day. So I would categorize it as low. If we have to prioritize, I would categorize it as low.
Okay.
A
Thank
general question about roundabouts. Is it generally agreed that probably the best use of roundabouts is to stop people from just driving quickly straight through intersections?
Chair and members of the commission, it's hard to say best use. The best use of roundabouts, in my opinion, is to reduce severe injury and fatalities at signalized and unsignalized intersections, because you take that out of the possibility. Now, it does slow traffic approaching and through the roundabout. Absolutely, that's how they're designed.
You can't go straight.
And you can't go. Yeah, so you
got to go around it.
The way roundabout is designed and defined is that slow entry, slow circulation. So yes, you slow traffic through the intersection. The reason this one's on the list, just for a little bit of background, is we have for many years, including back in the early 1990s, had a lot of residents ask for that intersection to be signalized, a three-way stop. People have asked for roundabouts. There's a general belief that it's unsafe, or people just traffic drives fast through it, and people, when they're on Park Capri making that left turn, don't always feel comfortable because approaching traffic, particularly from the right, coming from the neighborhood to the right, coming down that hill can be fairly fast. The city has resisted putting in a three-way stop, and it's kind of always thought that a roundabout makes more sense from a traffic control device. It is a much more expensive device because you have to go into the park hillside to make that roundabout work because of the grade south on Park Capri. It has to be all pushed that way. I would tend to agree in the scheme of things that this is at least a medium, if not low.
Okay, great. Thank you, Tom. Yeah.
My question with that location is, I guess it would be traffic traveling, what would it be, west on Park Sienna, maybe? They're coming around that turn. What's the line of sight when they come around? Now they're facing a roundabout. Is it sufficient? I'm assuming you guys have done the engineering analysis. But.
Yeah, so the line of sight, considering the speed limits on those streets, is okay. Not great, but it's okay, and it meets all the standards. The problem is we get a fair amount of people that drive in excess of that, and depending on who you talk to, it's either the neighbor or the gardener or the service repair person. I mean, there's a variety of people that I've seen the finger pointed at, but it's just some people drive fast, and in all parts of the community. Honestly, aggressive driving is a problem everywhere in California right now. But it is one that, again, we put it on the list and in the general plan because it's something that has been continually brought up over the years as the city needs to address this. The thing about putting the roundabout in is it would be the most expensive option if the city were to do it and put in something other than a roundabout. We do have a source of funds, and we potentially then, if it's something that costs $100,000, we have $900,000 we can allocate to other projects.
Yeah, because, I mean, looking at that location, I would think, well, you just put a three-way stop signs, but then what impact on quality of life does that have? Now everyone has to stop every time instead of keeping it flowing, and has that been part of your analysis?
That's been the general concern. You know, it doesn't follow the standard warrants in terms of needing to be a multi-way stop as a need. There's no collision history at all at the location that we've been able to find in terms of reported collisions. We do know that people have said, yeah, you know, there's been some fender benders where there was probably no report taken by an official, you know, body. But just because of the consequences. But, you know, we do know if multi-way stops get put in and drivers believe that there's not a good reason to stop, they roll through the intersection, which for vehicle to vehicle is generally not that bad. But when you get pedestrians and bicyclists mixed into that, drivers rolling through and pedestrians trying to cross intersections is never good, because the expectation from the pedestrian is that vehicle's going to stop.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, commissioners, shall we go medium or low on this?
I vote for low.
I say low.
Okay, all right. We'll go low.
So the next one would be Mulholland at Freedom. This is one where we have, right now we have a rapid flashing beacon at a marked crosswalk. We do get school kids that cross there. This is, I think it was always sort of seen as potentially a long-term improvement, but at least an interim improvement, and that ultimately a traffic signal might be a more appropriate thing long-term, which again it's why it's on the list. Again, this is a location we don't have, at least recently, we haven't had any collision issues. The issues that we have tend to be more related to people trying to merge, because there's a merge right through this intersection area. So we've been trying to address the merge more so than the crossing or the intersection itself.
Don't you think back-to-back traffic lights, because the next one immediate is Paul Revere, right? And when the school is, you know, the kids are being picked up, it's a huge backup there. You know, then 2 traffic lights back-to-back, and then we have the Mulholland Drive and Mulholland Highway. It's going to create more traffic backups there, or it can be engineered somehow.
Chair, members of the commission, it's a good question. The distances are far enough apart, and the side street traffic is low enough that we would coordinate all of that to prioritize the through movements, particularly during the peak periods. What it would do, though, is create gaps in that traffic for people to come off the side streets during those peak periods, where it's right now it can be very congested, and if you're trying to turn left off of the side street onto Mulholland to go down into LA and get to work, it's really difficult to do so now. So the traffic signal would be beneficial for that kind of thing. But really, as far as traffic flow along the corridor, it would not be detrimental, because we would be coordinating all those signals to work together.
Okay, thank you.
Question on that? That's near where I live, so I deal with exactly what you're talking about all the time, going into the city to the north. Has the city done a study of what it would cost to just extend the merge lane to the south up to the intersection? Because that tends to be the problem. You can get across one side of the traffic, but not the other.
I don't know if it was studied when the Mulholland corridor improvement projects were done, where they narrowed the road and put the medians in. It should have been studied at that time in terms of where the merge goes. You know, really, when it's free flow traffic, it's more important from a safety perspective as to where that merge is than when it's congested. Wherever you put the merge, that's where the bottleneck is. So we have, you know, we are sort of looking at that corridor now, whether the city can extend the merge or move the merge from that area is something we're looking at. Now, again, it's a trap right also onto the side street right now. There's a right turn lane onto the side street too. But it is something we're looking at. We don't have a recommended solution at this time.
All right, well, then I think let's make that a medium priority, please. Commissioners?
I agree.
Agree.
And I think we can, not to leapfrog here, but I think the Mulholland at Edingham, that traffic signal as well can go in the medium side. Commissioners?
I would think it should go low, the Eddingham, because there are gonna be too many traffic lights, on Mulholland all of a sudden,
I would agree low on that.
Okay. Commissioner Smith? Agreed. Okay, so we'll go low on Mulholland and Eddingham traffic signal.
Chair and Commission, just to
Yeah.
provide a little more context. This intersection is one that we have had pedestrian safety issues. We've had kids hit in that crosswalk. We just went and replaced some of the equipment there with some flashing beacons, some new rapid flashers. There's a lot more community concern about this particular location. So my recommendation is that we actually flip those two and that this one be medium and the other one be low.
Okay. Yeah. I wouldn't disagree with that.
I agree with that.
Okay with it?
That's okay.
Thank you for the insight, Tom.
So I think the last roadway improvement project would be Mulholland widening from Dry Canyon, Cold Creek to the city limits. So this would be widening essentially along Mulholland all the way to the south. This is like our phase 3, Tatiana, phase 3 project of our Mulholland master plan that has recently been done. Phase 1 is the project that's being constructed now. Phase 2 then extends that improvements down past the school. And then this would be kind of the final phase, which would take it all the way down to the city limit. Again, it's that same thing that we talked about on Las Virgenes, widening, so we have some shoulders, at least a 33-foot edge of pavement to edge of pavement with some retaining walls and some guardrails and things to make it safer.
And this particular project also has funding coming from Measure M? Or is there an allocation to that already, or there is?
It's partially. It doesn't have the 100% funding for
Right,
the project,
right.
but yes,
Okay,
partially it's funded.
good. Thank you, Tatiana. I would vote to keep that in the high side then, on a priority, Commissioners.
I would say it's high.
I agree.
I can accept it.
Thank you, Chair and Commissioners. So this last group of projects is really more of like a list of programs. Citywide transit amenities, so this would be improvements to not only buying new buses, but also bus shelters and benches and lighting and signage, as well as kind of general pedestrian safety enhancements for putting in more rapid flashing beacon crossings and speed feedback signs and those types of things. New and improved bike parking facilities, so bike racks, those kind of things. And then creating a school safety program where we would actually kind of proactively go out and create some suggested about the school programs, work with the schools on some education programs, depending on the age group to make kids more comfortable and more aware of what they're doing when they want to walk or bike.
And just so we're clear on what you would like from us, this is all of these line items you'd like us to prioritize as we've done with the previous?
That is correct.
Or, okay.
And if you want to lump them together and put them somewhere, that's fine. If you want to break them up because you feel that one is more important than the other, then that's also good direction for us.
Well, I see value in every single line item here. I wouldn't want to, I don't feel that I want to separate them at all. And I think anytime we're talking about school safety, education, working with the children in our community and making sure that they're comfortable, whether they're walking and biking, other pedestrian safety enhancements, certainly I think that's necessary. So I would vote to leave all of these in a high priority. Commissioners?
So we are clear, are we talking about line item 30 on our list, or? No, I see that, but it's, we were going based on our printed.
This-
Starting at what number?
This would be line items 29, 31, 32, 33, and 34. Sorry, there is one more project, which we can talk about after this, and that's for upgrading the city's existing traffic signal system.
Oh, okay, that's the 30, right? That's line 30.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree with you. Let's put it for high priority.
Absolutely.
I would say as far as the education goes with pedestrian safety, bicycle safety, I see us being able to really use our local police departments, sheriff's department, and CHP that offer a lot of those programs at no cost to the city, to anyone here, and we can get them involved in these programs as well, so which would save costs for the city. So I just think that's something for us to consider as we implement these.
Thank you. So then the last project is the citywide traffic signal system upgrade. This is a project that we do have some grant monies for, and we're moving forward on in the next year or so, but it's not fully funded. This would be upgrading all the city's traffic signal controllers. So the ones we have now are essentially previous generation for about 35% to 40% of them. The traffic signal operations center, which is across the hall, needs to be upgraded. It's a facility that has outlived its current life, and the system itself needs to be upgraded to the current version of the system-wide software that kind of manages and oversees, monitors, and then notifies when things are going on, and allows us to monitor and make changes from here also. And along with that, it's things like adding in better communications to all of our signals, putting in at some locations cameras so we can monitor the traffic conditions, and actually we've been talking with the sheriff's department, providing those camera feeds to enforcement so that they can also bring those up within their systems. And then also making sure that all of our detection systems that detect when vehicles are there, that they also work properly for bicycles and motorcycles.
Great, thank you, Tom. I don't even need to really overthink this one. I mean, that's a high priority. So particularly when we're talking about software that's coming to its end of useful life, and yeah, so let's make that a high priority. Commissioners?
I agree.
Agree.
Well, I think you did it. So it looks like we end up about a third.
Yeah. Without trying to get there, actually.
Yeah,
But,
no, I know, and
but
so
we did.
I thank you very much for. I think we had a good discussion. I think there was very good rationale and reasons, and so I think our consultant team will have a good time being able to move forward now to the next step to look at creating a program that is going to be equitable for development, but will give us some improvements we need. Sort of the next steps, I had a slide, but I'm not going to jump over there yet. The next steps are we're going to go back to our consultant team, kind of work through all that effort, come up with some basic recommended fees based upon expected development. We'll come back to the commission and have you approve those fees, and then move the program on with a recommendation to city council at that time. And it'll probably be at your meeting in April.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much for your time, Tom. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
So, moving into agenda items, did we have traffic safety updates?
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, Tom had alluded to it in his presentation, discussions that we're starting to have with the Sheriff's Department. So I'd like to ask Assistant Engineer Treya Bezdesny to walk you through some of the recent conversations we've had and where we hope those go. Treya?
Thank you, Chair and Commissioners. So I'm going to provide a very brief update on, we're just kind of getting started on these traffic safety updates. So this is the first one that the Commission will be receiving, and we are hoping to continue to have you receive them on a quarterly basis as we meet. So just a little bit of background, I'm sure you all know, but the city contracts with the Sheriff's Department for all of our police enforcement. So they do traffic enforcement and general enforcement around our schools. That's kind of what we want to discuss more today as an important thing for our traffic and transportation. So Tom and I met with one of the sergeants with LASD on the 12th of this month to kind of get a, just to lay some base work for these are the things that we want to start discussing on a regular basis, because previous to this, we would just emails back and forth kind of a little bit. It wasn't very formal, and so this is going to formalize this effort. So some things that we're going to be talking about are our new portable radar signs and best places to be putting them. We're going to be taking a lot of that data from the signs and giving it to them so that they can prioritize enforcement a lot better. More school area traffic, as Tom mentioned, we have one motor cop that goes and does all of our school traffic, and if you've ever tried to go to every school in the morning to see them all start, it's really hard to do. So every day, they can't go to every single school, and that's okay, but this is going to be an effort for us to disclose to them issues that I'm hearing about, I get complaints about, and then they can let us know where they're seeing more citations and more issues. And then on that term as well, just general traffic incident and citation trends, so that we can look at it from a more engineering standpoint. Are there reasons that these areas are having more of these higher trends or not? And then these meetings don't have any additional fiscal impact. The city funds the Sheriff's Department through the already approved budget. And this is just a very quick informational item. So if you guys have any questions or any recommendations for what you might want to see us bring to you in the future in terms of these updates.
Wonderful, Taya. Thank you so much. Are we, is staff already interfacing with the Sheriff's Department? So
Correct.
we are already, these are ongoing discussions, right? This is nothing necessarily new, or?
They're becoming a lot more formalized.
Okay.
These used to be kind of one-off emails here and there. Hey, I'm getting a lot of calls about this area. Can you go check this out? And this is going to be more of a formalized way of them telling us what issues they're having, us telling them what issues we're having, and also getting a lot of data a lot sooner than we would otherwise. And I believe Tom also has some comments on that.
Wonderful, thank you.
Chair and members of the commission, one of the things that we wanted to also be able to do, and the reason why we're going to be holding them a few weeks before these meetings every quarter, is that they're going to provide us with up-to-date traffic collision information. So in our reports, we're going to start providing that to you as also information. I think it's important that the commission gets those.
Yes, thank you.
The city council gets them as part of their monthly updates, and those are available in written format, I believe with the packet that council has, but this will be a way for us to formally give you kind of, here's what's happening from a quarterly basis. The sergeant said he could occasionally come also to discuss any particular issues that they're having. You know, like Treya was saying, we were getting information to them, or we were getting requests to them to go out and do things, but closing that loop back and finding out what happened. How many tickets did you write? So we can get back to the resident and say, you know what, the officer was out there. They didn't see a single person speeding on your street. You know, I'm really sorry they were out there during these hours, but there's just not a lot of traffic. Their resources really need to be somewhere else. Or they're out there, they wrote 40 tickets. Thank you for letting us know. You know, just providing that feedback to the community so they know that their comments and suggestions are being considered and actually following through on something is very important, I think.
Yep, absolutely. We couldn't agree more. Yep. So thank you for that. Thank you, Treya. Next item on the agenda will be the transit update.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, this is something that you get quarterly. Treya Bezdesny is going to walk you through our different transit programs and let you know how they're doing. Treya?
Wonderful, thank you.
Chair and Commissioners, so as our interim director mentioned, this is a quarterly update, and overall public transit, we kind of have a reset in July 1st in August. Our peak hour service does not operate during the summer months. We don't have as much peak hour traffic. So most of these numbers are based on that July 1st restart. So our Line 1 monthly ridership 280, that is our Monday through Friday all day long going around this city in loops. That is our free service. Lines 2 through 5, that is our paid peak hour service. It operates for a few hours in the morning, a few hours in the afternoon. And that's really to help with school congestion. So right now our monthly ridership is a little bit below what it was at the end of last year, but with August being a half month and July, we're expecting those numbers to go up. They usually tend to by the end of the calendar year. The new microtransit program that started in February has had a total of 380 unique passenger trips, and that is between 29 unique passengers. So we have currently 29 people who are using it on a fairly regular basis, and this program is only on the weekends currently. At the last meeting, I did bring an item to discuss future expansion, and that is something that was brought to council, and they provided feedback, as did you, and we are looking at different methods of expanding that, and we'll bring it back to you guys again. And then our dial-a-ride program is for our seniors and disabled, and we are currently only operating that on Monday through Friday because they use that service as our microtransit on the weekends. And so we have added 2 new riders since our meeting 3 months ago. We have this year annual budget for our transit program is about 1.2 million. I use money from Proposition A, Proposition C, Measure R Local Return, Measure M, and the TDA Transportation Development Act, Article 3. And this is another informational item. If you guys have any questions, please feel free.
Wonderful, thank you. No questions from me. Commissioners?
No.
Awesome. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, wonderful. Thank you again. So moving on to our division report.
I will provide a division report. This is a
Right.
brief update on the projects and other tasks that were not discussed at the a separate item. Although the first item on my division report is the item that was requested at the previous Traffic and Transportation Commission meeting to look at the Mulholland and Freedom, and we already discussed it as a part of the Tom's report about the traffic mitigation fees. So you already know the present and the future of this intersection. But I will take you a little bit to the past to describe the conditions that, of course, you're familiar with, that how it was before the improvement project was constructed at that location. It was part of the Mulholland Highway Improvement Project that was described in the general plan originally in 1994, 1997. And then the Mulholland Highway Master Plan for Capital Improvements was created in 2003 and 2004, which defined beautification and circulation improvements. And the Mulholland Highway Corridor Phase 3 project was constructed in 2015-2016. Don't be confused with Mulholland to Topanga Phase 3 that is in construction right now. And it installed beautification element, safety and circulation improvements following that Mulholland Highway plan. And the previous condition of this intersection is shown on this image from Google, provided through lane, left turn lane, and another lane for right and through movement. The project, that Mulholland Highway Improvement Project, changed that intersection to make this right turn lane as the designated right turn without going through. And that's, I think, what you're referring to in terms of the merge lane being continued south of the intersection, correct? And just to describe what was constructed, the project narrowed travel lanes because one of the concerns was the speed, and that was improvement constructed for traffic calming and the safety improvements. The signing and striping segregated the modes of transportation and helped to minimize conflicts between them. We also did the school area drop-off, pickup zone improvement, creating the area that separate that from the through traffic and higher speed traffic. And there were pedestrian and bicycle improvements constructed with that. The sidewalk was constructed which separated the pedestrian from traffic by providing the landscape parkways on both sides of the intersection. And this picture, this photo shows the current conditions of the intersection. And just to follow on that project, I requested the report from the Sheriff's Department with the traffic collisions at that particular and near that particular intersection, and it actually demonstrated that the safety improvements that the city put in worked, because the data shows for the 5 years prior to the project, there were 4 collisions that resulted in injuries and 2 injury collisions involving pedestrians. And actually the data for even a longer period of time for from 2016 to 23, which is for 7 years, only showed 2 collisions and 0 collisions, and 2 collisions resulting in injury and 0 collisions involving pedestrians. And but again, we are always evolving. We're always looking at the traffic and traffic patterns and the safety issues in the intersection, and that project is still, that intersection is still on the list of the project in our general plan. But this is just to answer the questions why what happened and why this intersection changed.
My specific interest when I raised it at the last meeting was that when traffic exits from Freedom, which is on the right in this picture, turns left to go towards the city, the merge lane that's down by Gelson's does not extend up to the intersection. So in the mornings when the traffic is heavy, you can often get through one side but not through the other, and that's what merge lanes are for. And we don't have that there. And that would be my request, is to extend that merge lane up to the intersection.
You're talking about the intersection with Mulholland Drive.
The intersection in your picture here, yeah. Freedom East to Mulholland North. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, we installed some pavement markings there, and there is the crosswalk for pedestrian improvement. But again, that project is on the list of the future project, and that's another item to review and look at the potential improvements and then go from there.
Thank you, Tatiana. You know, the improvement based upon the project, post-project, is fantastic. I mean, you know, less injuries, 0 injuries involving pedestrians. I mean, that's wonderful. So congratulations to you and staff. That was great.
Thank you. The next slide is providing you brief updates on the current Old Topanga and Mulholland Highway project, the construction of which is continuous right now. And we are now close to the final stages. We're installing, there was already resurfaced, the stretch was already resurfaced. We're in the process of installing traffic loops for the traffic signal. Traffic signal activation is scheduled for November 1st. But we're still waiting to hear from Southern California Edison on the final dates for work on the relocation of the pole. And after that, we will be able to come back in to finish the soil nail wall, retaining wall at the intersection, continuous sidewalk all the way to the intersection, and then do the final striping on the project. But we're looking at the SCE being out there in November, December, finishing the work, and the months or months and a half after that, the project will be completed.
Chair and members of the commission, if I could add a little bit to that, one of the things that we are doing with this project is, now that we've got 3 signals kind of in a row, fairly closely spaced, is we're going to be, for the first time, introducing coordination timing, where the 3 signals will be coordinated such that the traffic flow is known from one signal to the other, and was actually modeled and programmed that way. So that'll be going in the new intersection, the old Topanga at Mulholland, what we're calling north or east, which is the old intersection is being modified. The phasing is being modified there, as well as the introduction of a pedestrian crossing, and then the signal at the high school. And those 3 will now have coordination timing where they'll be, working together.
That's wonderful. Yeah, great. Thank you.
The next update on the citywide Green Street project, phase 1. The project location is on Las Virgenes Road, north of Mount Calabasas Road, all the way to the terminus of Las Virgenes Road. And construction has started. The graph grading is completed for all, we're doing it in segments. So it's divided into 3 segments, and rough grading almost complete for all 3 segments. The reason for that was to when contractor is working one of the segments, because the parking in the area is such important and for apartment complex across the street, we are making sure that we're providing enough space for residents to park while we're doing the construction and closing partially that shoulder. The project updates and schedule is that segment 3, which is the northern part, including the completion of the cul-de-sac, improvement of the cul-de-sac, some drainage improvements, parking, that will be completed in December of this year. Segment 2, that's a little bit north, more south of the very, very north part, is going to be completed in January 24th. And the most southern segment, which is close to Mount Calabasas, is planning to be completed in February 24, and the final project completion is scheduled for March 2024. Public Works citizen request, I know that's a lot of data. It's everything for this year. And we had, through our system, we had 213 requests received. And the winners, as usual, is typical. It's the potholes, trees, sidewalk condition. And that's the data. If you have any questions on that, we always provide that just for you to know how the system works and what usually Public Works receives. And the last and the most fun update is the Walk to School Day that was conducted on October 4th this year, and all the schools in Calabasas participated. And we had a great participation from children and from city councilmen and commissioners. Hopefully next year you'll find time to, out of your busy schedule, to participate as well. And it's always a fun event. Kids like that. Children love that. Walking to school together with kids, having fun on the way. And that's something that we do every year. Do you have any questions on any of it?
Thank you for that, Tatiana. No questions from me. Commissioners?
Not on that topic, but on separate topics, yes?
Go ahead.
I mean, I asked you before the meeting starts. I remember last meeting we discussed about having speed monitoring devices placed at certain streets. One of them was, I believe it was Adamsville. And after a few weeks or maybe a month after that, I noticed that those speed monitoring devices were placed on Old Topanga and then on Mulholland Highway next to high school before you get to high school. And they were never placed on that Adamsville. It was like 3 months ago. I'm just wondering if we talked about this and they were supposed to be placed at on that street. What happened?
We have several portable radar speed reading devices, and we have locations in the city which we know that can be helpful, particularly around school areas and some locations that we know their speeding is an issue. So we rotate them, and Adamsville is added to that list. And that sign, I believe it was placed there earlier today. So it's just we're going through all these locations in order, and finally it made its way to Adamsville.
Oh, okay.
Thank you for
Question,
that.
Tatiana? One question.
Go ahead.
On the portable speed monitoring devices, do they collect data?
Yes.
Which is one of the things that we can use with the sheriff. We can collect data on all of them, but the new ones are even better. We can use that data to help strategize better with the sheriff.
Wonderful. Thank you. All
Does
right.
these speed monitoring devices take pictures also, or no? Just
No, there are no pictures, no.
No
They
pictures.
just collect the
These don't.
data and
And the license cameras that we have, they only take picture of the license,
the license.
not the car or the driver or pedestrian, passengers.
All right, wonderful. So, future agenda item requests?
Well, I have one request that has nothing to do with the agenda. We were talking with Commissioner Smith before the meeting starts. We were just wondering if we could push the meetings into 6 o'clock instead of 7 o'clock. Instead of 7 p.m., pull it
From 7
to 6, if it's possible, if it works for everyone.
I'm on board.
We will check if there's any reason we cannot, and we'll make sure you know
Thank
well
you.
in advance.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Well then, if we don't have any other future agenda item requests, then we will adjourn this Traffic and Transportation Commission meeting to January 23rd, 2024. Thank you, everyone.